can hear panting. My dog is behind the camera and panting. Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you guys are new, hi, my name is Vivian and today we're going to be doing our August wrap-up video. I am very excited to talk about all of the books that I read in this month. I read a total of 16 books, which is, I think, the most that I've read in a month. I think I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure 16 was the most. I also had 2 DNFs this month. I had a pretty average reading month this month. I read a lot of good books, but I also read a lot of not so great books. I read some 3 stars. It's all over the place, but we do have some 5 stars in this video, so I'm excited to actually talk about those 5 stars with you guys. I also have some notes on my phone because I don't remember the first book that I read this month, but thankfully, because of my notes, I do remember. The first book I read this month is Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. This is a part of the War of Lost Hearts trilogy, and this is the first book. This book follows our female protagonist called Tisana. She is enslaved currently, but she recently got enough to buy her freedom out, so she decides to go and pay off her freedom, but something bad happens. She ends up killing somebody, and so she had to escape and join the orders in order to survive and in order to help other slaves out there in her world. Unfortunately, to join the orders, however, she is supposed to enter this apprenticeship, and the only person available to teach her is a guy called Maxentarius, aka Max. And Max doesn't really like her, doesn't really like the orders, and you'll learn to see why he doesn't really enjoy and love the orders. But you follow her journey as she joins the orders, as she figures out the magic in her, and it's a very interesting and exciting high fantasy world that I've never read about before. I read The Serpent and the Wings of Night and I really enjoyed that duology, and so I got into this book hoping that I would enjoy this book as well, and I definitely had a lot of fun with this book. I gave it 4 stars. It was a very strong book to a trilogy, first of all. Second of all, this book just had a lot of character development, which I really like in a fantasy book. Some key characteristics in Carissa Broadbent's writing is that she has really strong world building and also really strong pacing, and so I had a lot of fun with this book. It flew through very seamlessly, and I never got bored with the book at all. This is also dual POV. You only get the second POV in the latter half of the book, but essentially I had a lot of fun seeing both of their insights into this world and how they kind of view the world differently. Love it so much, so I give this 4 stars. The second book I read is Acofas, A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. This is the novella in the ACOTAR series, and I rated this 3 stars, I'm pretty sure. This book was just a filler book. You guys know what ACOTAR is? I mean, I don't really need to explain it, right? Because everybody knows ACOTAR, but this is just a filler book. Even though it filled the spaces in between of what happened to Farah and Rhysand after the war, all of that, it didn't really have much of anything, but I give it 3 stars because obviously I love the characters in this, but plot-wise, not so much. Then I read Legendary by Stephanie Garber. Most of these books are in reading vlogs, by the way. I'll try to link them down in the description box, but I'll also try to link them in the cards as well. Anyway, this is Legendary by Stephanie Garber. This is the second book in the Caraval trilogy. Caraval is about this magical carnival that appears every few years. Every few years they will appear in different islands and it never really appears in the same island twice. The main character in the first book is Scarlet, and in this one it is Donatella, who is the sister of Scarlet. In this book you follow Donatella, who wants to figure out the death of her mom, and so she ends up joining Caraval again in order to find out who Legend really is. I read Caraval last month and I mentioned in that wrap-up that I did like Donatella as a character more than Scarlet, and I agreed 100% because when I read this book I felt like her character was just so much more superior. She was a very strong and independent woman. I felt like her story was so much more interesting, so I gave Legendary 4 stars, and I really had a lot of fun with this book. It didn't feel high stakes enough and the climax didn't really feel very climactic, but in general I enjoyed the book because the writing was great and the plot was great, and I really liked Donatella as a character, so I rated Legendary 4 stars. And then we read an amazing book, you guys. We read Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This book was so good. This is by far the best Ali Hazelwood book I've read. I've read both The Love Hypothesis and Love on the Brain, but for me Love Theoretically completely is the cherry on top of her book. This book was just so good. The male protagonist, Jack Smith, is amazing. And here we follow Elsie. She is a scientist, but she actually has a side job working as a fake girlfriend in this app. What happens is that she applied as a researcher in this company, and when she goes to get interviewed, she ends up meeting the brother of her fake girlfriend client. The brother is Jack Smith, and he knows her as a different person entirely. And Elsie, her character, she is very much someone who pretends to be someone else. She changes her character and her personality according to the person she's talking to, but Jack Smith sees through all that, and it's very, very lovely to see him and her kind of get together. It was just so fun to see fake dating, but not with the main characters, and also seeing Jack Smith being a complete simp for Elsie. This was so good. The only reason I gave this book 4.5 and not 5 stars is because the science portions, the jargon in here, there's a lot more compared to the other books that Ali Hazelwood has written, and for me the science was a little bit boring. It kind of cuts off the flow sometimes, but I still love the plot, I still love the story, and so I gave this 4.5. And then we read something very exciting, Kiss the Sky by Kristen Beckett Ritchie was next. This is the 4th book in the Addicted World series, but it's the 1st book in the Calloway Sisters series, and I loved this book. This is about Rose and Connor Cobalt. And Rose and Connor, they both had a very tumultuous relationship, but you see them grow together as a couple. You see snippets of them in the Addicted series books, but this one you get so much of them that I absolutely just fell in love with this book. I really liked Connor's personality. I liked the way that he grew throughout this story, and his dedication to Rose was just so lovely to see. I loved seeing the things that he say about Rose. It shows how much he truly loves her, but he just grew up not being able to show his feelings, and it's so fulfilling to see him kind of grow out of that and be able to show his feelings towards Rose at the end. And I just love their story overall. There was no miscommunication, there were no problems whatsoever. The conflicts that they go through were just resolved very, very well. This obviously got 5 stars. I had a whole reading vlog about this book, so you guys can check that out, but I just really like this book. I don't know why, but I loved it. The feelings that it gave me when I was reading it, unmatched. And then I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I also annotated this book, which shows how much I actually really liked reading this. We follow Sam and Sadie. Back when they were young, they met in the hospital. Sam was there because his leg broke, and Sadie was there because her sister was sick. And they met, they bond over gaming. Somehow they lose contact, and a few years later, they accidentally met in a train station, and that's how they go back to being friends. And that's also how they end up making a game together and making a company together. And you kind of follow their lives from their 20s to their 30s. And even though this book was something I went into thinking that it was going to be a romance fiction, it ended up being so much more. This is definitely general fiction and not romance at all. The gaming portion kind of loses me sometimes, but in general it was a great book and I do recommend it. So 4 stars for Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And then I read a Kindle book. I read Playing by the Rules by Monica Murphy. This is the 2nd book in the Players series, Interconnected Standalone series. I'm not going to lie, I don't remember what this book is about because I didn't really have a good time reading this. I know it's brother's best friend trope. He's the quarterback, I think, but in general, this one I gave 1.5 stars, mainly because I feel like the characters didn't have any depth and they weren't like delved into very well when it comes to their feelings or their family background. Everything just felt very lacking, so I gave this book 1.5 stars. Also, say hello to my dog. He is here to grace his presence. It's a Conan because his paws are currently having intense allergies, so he's been licking his paws all the time. Hi, Babas. Hi, Babas. I then read Heartbreak, Houseshare by Emily Merrill, and wow, this book completely took me by surprise. I enjoyed it so much. I read this book because Rachel Catherine talked about it, and I'm so happy I picked it up because this book was just very heartwarming and it made me smile and laugh all the time, and I really enjoyed this book. You follow Felicity, aka Flick, in this book. She just came out of college. She just moved into her new apartment with her boyfriend, but somehow something happens and they break up and she has to move out of that apartment, and she ends up moving into a house share with 3 other women. Some of them are in their early 20s, some of them are in their late 20s. The main point of this book is that Flick is a journalist. Flick wants wants to create a 20s bucket list, and somehow one way or another the company that she works with wants her to make this 20s bucket list into a column, and you just follow their lives in their 20s, and it's really fun to watch them grow, especially if you yourself are in your 20s like I am, and to see all of their feelings, to see all of their concerns in their life. It just makes me feel nostalgic. You don't really know who you are in your 20s, you don't really know what you want to do in your 20s, and that's totally okay, and I just really like this book because of that. There's also like a subplot of romance in this book, but I feel like that romance, even though it's cute, it's not the main point of the story. And I gave this book 4.5 stars mainly because there is something that happened in the ending, not the ending, almost at the end of the book, and it's something to do with her romance and also her relationship with her ex, and I didn't really like that, which is why I gave 4.5. But if the ending was great, I would have given it 5 stars all the way. And then I read Finale by Stephanie Garber. This is the 3rd book in the Caribou trilogy. I talked about Legendary, if you guys remembered. I didn't really like this book. This book I feel like is the weakest out of the 3 books in the Caribou trilogy. This book was just very lackluster in the magic system and the world building. That is what made me not really like this book. The world building in this, the plot in this, it just didn't feel that exciting. I still loved reading the book because the writing, like Stephanie Garber's writing, is amazing, super whimsical, fantastical, really easy to read, but the plot lacked a lot and I couldn't really understand much when it comes to the plot. So this one I gave 3 stars. And then I read Children of Fallen Gods by Carissa Broadbent. This is the 2nd book in the War of Lost Hearts trilogy. I talked about the 1st book just now, if you remembered, but this one follows Tisana's journey, and I don't want to talk too much about the plot because it will be spoilers for the 1st book. But this book I also gave 4 stars. I feel like this book, honestly, the latter half is a lot stronger than Children of Fallen Gods, but because the first half was stagnant, that's why I gave this 4 stars. If it was all upbeat and jam-packed and great, I would have given it 4.5 because the ending of this book was absolutely insane, and the plot twist of this book was crazy. I remember just being super surprised by what happened in this book. This is 600 pages, by the way, so I wasn't bored at all with this book. Yes, the front part was slow, but it wasn't boring. It was just slow. Like, there was nothing happening, nothing going on, but I still read through the book and I still loved it. So, Children of Fallen Gods was a 4-star read for me. And then I read Blood Mercy by Bella Roth. I DNF'd this book. It's my first DNF. I read it on Kindle Unlimited. I couldn't get into the book. It was way too long and very slow. Nothing really happening. And I know some people have talked about this book and they said that you need to really push through the first half of the book. But I personally don't want to push through the first half because I don't feel like the first half is worth pushing through, if that makes sense. So I DNF'd the book. It was great while it lasted, but it didn't give me any sort of feeling, so I didn't have the book. And then I read Divine Rivals on Kindle Unlimited. This is by Rebecca Ross. For me, I gave it 3.5 stars. Basically, this book is about Iris and Roman. Did I get the guy's name wrong? I might have gotten the guy's name wrong. Basically, Iris and Roman, hopefully his name is Roman, they are rivals in this newspaper company, and in the world that they live in, the gods are currently going into war, and Iris's brother is currently in the war, and Iris, missing her brother, has been writing in her typewriter to send letters to her brother, not knowing that the letters are actually going to Roman, and that Roman is reading all of her letters. And one day Roman decides to reply to her back, and they end up communicating anonymously, but one way anonymous because Roman knows it's Iris, but Iris doesn't know it's Roman. You kind of follow their story there. I'm not going to talk too much about it because it's going to be spoilers, but I didn't enjoy this book because first, it was marketed to be a fantasy, but it wasn't really that fantasy because you don't really get a lot of magic in this, just that the typewriters just send messages to each other somehow. But the gods situation, like the magic that plays a part in the gods war, wasn't explained very well, and it wasn't also described very well. It wasn't even talked about. It's like a third party situation going on, and so I felt like it wasn't fantasy. It felt more like a historical warfare type of book. If I went into this knowing it was that kind of book, I would have viewed it differently. I don't want to get hate on this because I know a lot of people like it, and I'm so sorry that I didn't like it. I did, however, like Roman. I feel like his character was very well fleshed out. Iris too. I feel like the two main characters, essentially, they both are great characters, and even though their relationship together to me at least, felt a little bit insta-lovey, but I felt like their love towards each other was very, very pure and sweet, and it just made me really smile, and I really like their relationship together. I feel like what really saved this book was their relationship, and I am excited to read the next book because I hope at least that the next book they're gonna talk more about the gods and the fantasy aspect of this, so I'm excited to read the next book. I read another Kindle Unlimited book. I read Heavenly Bodies by Imani Erui. I am so sorry. I have yet to figure out how to say her last name, but this one is a book that I read because of Raven-Haired Reader, and she rated that 5 stars. I immediately picked it up, didn't have to wait whatsoever. I trust her judgment super, super well, and oh my gosh, I had so much fun with this book. In this book, we follow our female protagonist called Elara. She lives in this world where the stars rule the world, and these stars, they're basically gods. They're like the god of love, god of war, all those things that are called stars in this book. Elara has been cursed by fate that she will fall in love with a star, and that will cause the death of both the star and her. And because of the prophecy, she's being chased and hunted down. She's then forced to escape her kingdom and take refuge in her enemy's kingdom. I felt like this book was great. It was a very basic adult fantasy romance book, and you get a lot of those really cliche tropes. So if you're going into this book wanting something new and different, you're not gonna get that. This book had all the points that I really, really liked. However, I did feel like sometimes a bit cringe because of how cliche this book is, but the romance was just so good. Enzo was such a swoon-worthy male main character, and that's why I really liked this book. But I rated Heavenly Bodies 4 stars, and I am excited to get into the second book, and I feel like a lot of you guys should go and read it. It's not highly rated on Goodreads right now, so please go and read the book. It's really, really good. If you guys like fantasy romance, you'll definitely like this book. Okay, and then I read Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. This is the last book in the Throne of Glass series. If you have watched a few of my videos, I don't want to talk too much about this book, mainly because I feel like I'm redundant when it comes to the Throne of Glass series. 5 stars all the way. I love this book. Can't really talk too much anyway because it's the last book of the series, but from my annotations, you guys, it is 100% 5 stars. Really good character development. I end up liking all the characters that are in this book. I feel like they all redeemed themselves, and so I don't want to talk too much about this book, but I loved it. I will be uploading a reading vlog where I read this book soon. I'm pretty sure next week, and you guys can see all of my reactions there because I'm pretty sure I sobbed like 3-4 times in that video, so please check that out. 5 stars. And then I read A Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie Oh. This is a Korean folklore retelling. We follow Mina. This town has this ritual where basically a girl has to be sacrificed to the sea god every year in order for storms and rain to get away from their town. And this year's sacrifice is supposed to be Mina's brother's lover, but because Mina doesn't want to see her brother being sad, she ends up sacrificing herself. And when she goes to the sea god's realm, she realizes everything is different. The sea god's currently in deep slumber, and there's nothing to do to save herself and her town. I rated this 2 stars. I didn't enjoy the book. I feel like the male protagonist is the only one I liked about this book, but the writing, I felt the pacing was just really off. Some parts were really, really dragged out, and some parts were not explained enough. I didn't really have fun with it. Maybe you guys will if you guys like a cozy fantasy type of book. I read I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. This is her memoir of how she got through child abuse, eating disorders, and all of that throughout her life as a child actor. I didn't rate this book because obviously it's a memoir. I don't really want to rate a person's life, but I love this book. I enjoyed it so much. Really eye-opening, gave me a lot of insight about her world and the dark side of Hollywood. And I also have a reading vlog on this book. Pretty sure it's going to be uploaded in the next few days. I recommend anyone to read this if you guys are not triggered by eating disorders and or child abuse. In general, it's a really great memoir. I flew through it, didn't get bored at all. Great read. The last book in this video is House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. My first adult mystery book. This is about Casey Fletcher. She is a recently widowed woman. She's currently battling her alcoholism, and her mom, not wanting her to get bad press, kicks her out to the lake house at where her husband actually passed away in, and she finds spending her free time in this lake house spying the house across the lake. And the house across the lake is inhabited by this couple called Tom and Catherine Royce. One day she was spying the house, something happened, Catherine goes missing, and she figures that she needs to go and solve this mystery. So first of all, I have heard a few things about Riley Sager's writing and how he likes to include paranormal, supernatural in his writing, but I didn't expect that kind of paranormal situation to come out, and I was very, very surprised. In general, the book had a lot of good plot twists, and I was very surprised most of the time, literally jaw-dropping, but I didn't really like the paranormal portion that happened in the latter half of the book. And so that is why I gave this 3.5 stars. Wasn't it for me? So 3.5 stars for The House Across the Lake. The last book I DNF'd is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. It's not that I didn't like the book, but I feel like Greek mythology, maybe it's not for me. And I know it's a sad book, so I'm not really currently wanting to read a sad story. I DNF'd The Song of Achilles. And that is it for this September wrap-up video. I read a total of 16 books. DNF 2 books, and I am very, very happy with my reads. I'm excited for September's reads because my TBR is amazing, and I hope I explained everything properly. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. If you guys read any of the books in this video, don't forget to talk about them in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts on these books, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!